Hi, welcome to another Science and Craft story time. This month we're going to read the book Oil Spill and then talk about what we can do about oil spills. And then we're going to do an interesting art process with colored pencils and a little bit of mineral oil. Hope you have fun. Oil Spill by Melvin Berger, illustrated by Paul Marocha. The night of March 24th, 1989 was dark and cold. A huge black oil tanker glided out of the port of Valdez, Alaska. Painted on its bow was its name, Exxon Valdez. The Exxon Valdez floated low in the water. About 50 million gallons of crude oil weighed it down. The huge tanker slowly sailed out into the Prince William Sound. And then it suddenly happened. Crunch! The ship slammed into an underwater reef, and thick black oil flowed out of the Exxon Valdez's smashed tanks. It poured into the dark water. The Exxon Valdez spilled out 11 million gallons of oil. That much oil could fill over 1,000 big swimming pools. The sticky oil soon covered 11,000 square miles of ocean water. That is an area as big as the state of Maryland. It damaged about 1,250 miles of Alaska's coastline. That's longer than the entire Atlantic coast of the United States, from Maine to the tip of Florida. You can see the area here. The oil stuck to the feathers of many ducks, geese, and other seabirds. The birds couldn't swim or fly. Over 300,000 died. Oil got into the bodies of fish, shrimp, and crabs. No one knows how many of them were killed. Sea otters, sea lions, harbor seals, and killer whales swallowed the oil. They breathed in the poisonous fumes. Their bodies were coated with oil. Thousands of these marine animals died. The spill from the Exxon Valdez was one of the worst in our country's history, but it was not the only one. An oil spill occurs somewhere in the world almost every day of the year. Oil spills have many causes. Some are accidents. A tanker like the Exxon Valdez runs aground or collides with another ship. Workers make mistakes as a tanker is being loaded or unloaded. An undersea oil well starts to leak. A tank or pipe breaks at a shoreline or a terminal. Some oil spills occur on purpose. The tanker captain tells the worker to clean out the tanks. Sometimes they flush the old oil into the sea. The causes of oil spills differ, but the results are the same. The oil spreads out, it floats on top of the water. Experts on oil spills rush to the scene, and they start to clean up the mess. Their first job is to stop the oil from spreading. They put a boom around the spill, and the boom acts like a collar, keeping the oil in one place. For small spills, the experts may call for a skimmer. There are several kinds of skimmers. One type works like a giant vacuum cleaner. It sucks up the oil from the water. Sometimes the oil the skimmer collects can be used again. See, it's going down in here. Bags filled with oil-soaked rags. This is a special pad. For some small spills, experts place special pads on top of the oil. The pads are like sponges and they soak up the oil. Then they have to get rid of the soaked up oil. For larger spills, the experts might set the oil on fire, but the fire sends smoke and gases into the air and leaves ash in the water. Cleanup crews also sometimes use chemicals to get rid of large oil spills. People aboard planes or boats spread the chemicals onto the oil. Some of these chemicals break the oil into tiny little bits that then mix with the water. Other chemicals make the oil come together, and the oil forms a layer like a sheet of rubber. One type of skimmer lifts the sheet of oil and oily debris out of the water. That's working here. The water goes down and the oil goes up. Chemicals make the oil less harmful, but they also add poisons to the water. In time, the oil from most spills drifts up onto the shore. Scientists spray the rocks and sand with hot water to wash the oil back into the sea. But the hot spray may also push the oil further into the rocks and the sand. Here, the oil can harm plants and animals that live on the shore. Scientists sometimes add a bacteria to the oil along the shore. The bacteria eat the oil and change it into harmless substances. But it would take huge amounts of bacteria to get rid of a large oil spill. Sometimes the experts decide that no action is the best way to treat an oil spill. The wind and the waves will mix the oil and water together. It's like mixing oil and vinegar to make salad dressing. In time, much of the oil disappears. Oil spills are major disasters. Slowly, scientists are learning how to clean them up. They're learning how to prevent the spills. How can we help prevent oil spills too? We can use less oil. If we use less oil, there will be fewer oil tankers in the oceans. Then the chance of spills won't be as large. One way to save oil is to use less electricity. Electricity is often produced by burning oil. Less electricity means less oil. Another way to cut oil needs is to use less gasoline, which is made from oil. That means driving smaller, more efficient cars and staying within the speed limit. We can also write letters to members of Congress and tell them we want new laws to prevent oil spills. Oil tankers should have double hulls. If the outer hull is damaged, the inner one will still hold the oil in. Tankers should have the most modern radar, radio, and other safety systems to help prevent collisions. And experts should teach tanker crews how to handle oil spills more quickly. Booms, skimmers, chemicals, and bacteria should be kept ready for emergencies all around the world. And oil companies should be helped to find new oil fields in the United States. They should not just depend on oil shipped from abroad. Together, we can make our seas and shoreline clean and beautiful again. The end. So, now we've read about oil spills, and it's time to see if we can guess how we might clean up an oil spill. And I sent a whole bunch of different things for you to do this experiment with. And in your plastic tray, you'll find a bunch of cotton balls, some coffee filters. You should have a piece of a sponge. You're going to set your Q-tips, and the larger container with a small amount of clear liquid in it aside. That's some mineral oil that we'll use later. Then you should have a fish and some feathers, a few shells. If you got rocks from outside, that's great. You've got some pretend fur. You have your, doesn't look like it anymore, but you have your crude oil. It's a little bit of cocoa powder mixed in with mineral oil that we'll want to shake up a little bit just to make it dark again. But that's just so it's easier to see the oil. I didn't think clear oil floating on water was going to be very visible. Then you have a small container with some dish soap we'll use later. So set all of that aside. And the first thing we're going to do is make our boat to have our oil spill from. So on the back of your first page of instructions, you have the how-to for making the paper boat. So the first thing we're going to do is bring the two short sides of your paper together and crease that. Then you're going to open it out and fold the two long sides together. Now bring it back to the short sides folded. You're going to bring one corner into the center line you just made, and then bring the other corner in to the center line. They should match up like that. Now fold, you have a small rectangle here. You're gonna fold that towards your triangle. Sometimes it's a little hard to get the pieces apart. on one side. Then you're going to flip it over and fold it up on the other side. Now you have something that looks a little bit like a hat. You're gonna grab that at the two folds and bring it out to make a square. And you can kind of help the point get flat. Smooth that out. Now you're going to take one corner and bring it up. Fold that. Flip that over. Bring the other corner up. And now, it always takes me a minute to figure this step out. All right, now we're gonna do the same thing we did before. Open it out, flatten it again into a smaller square. And now you have these two pieces here. So it looks like this, and you're gonna grab this piece and this piece and pull them out. And then you have to finagle a little bit. You're gonna open that center triangle out to be the center of your boat. And now you have a boat to float to make your oil spill. You might wanna kind of flatten him out and press him a little and then open him back up. To get your sides to stay up. On to the next step. So our next step is to start to create our ocean. We're going to put some water in the bottom. You don't need a whole lot of water. Actually, I'm forgetting my one tip that I was going to give you. These lettuce tubs get a little floppy when they have water in them. So if you have a tray to put underneath, it'll not only give you a good place to put your things that are yucky with oil, but it'll make it easier to carry everything to the sink later. I'm gonna put just a little more in, but you only need about, I don't know, half an inch to an inch. And we'll put our shells in. Again, if you have rocks from outside your house, that's fun. I didn't have any rocks that I could send home. Put in our fish, and we're gonna float our boat and put some of our crude oil carefully into our boat. Oh, look, he's already heavy with his load of crude oil. This is just mineral oil with a little cocoa powder in it. And, crash. There goes our oil spill. Oh no, what are we gonna do? You can see how the oil floats on top. I'm actually gonna pull my boat out to make this next part easier. It's gonna get wet and sink completely pretty quickly. So you can see how it floats on top. What do you think you might try to do? Let's think of a few ideas. Let's pause here. Do you think we can spoon it out? Let's try that. What do you notice about what you're getting as you spoon it out? Maybe we should have another container to put what we clean out into. So we're gonna spoon it in there. What do you notice about what you're getting? We're getting oil, but we're also getting a lot of water, aren't we? Yeah. And what keeps happening? Are we managing to get it off the top, or does it just keep spreading out more? So maybe spooning's gonna take a long time. In the book, they talked about trying to make a boom that would keep it contained. Wonder if we can do that with our cotton balls. Although it's pretty much spread out on our whole ocean, isn't it? Would that work? Oh, they seem to soak up the water too quickly, huh? Let's see. We can get a lot of oil out that way, huh? Boy, they are gross and oily. That's getting some of the oil. But boy, that's making a big mess that we're gonna have to throw away later, huh? Maybe coffee filters? Like those pads that they put on the shore? Let's see what that does. That soaked up quite a bit, and I also kind of broke it up into more pieces in mine. So that might be a good option. But again, then we have to throw those out. Boy, that's tricky. How about a sponge? What does a sponge do? Does a sponge soak it up? Anyway, so you get the idea. Keep trying different things that you think of and see what you think would work best. And one thing that I conclude is that it's very hard to clean up, just like the book said. So we'll come back and we'll do a couple more things with this. I'm gonna take out my fish. Oh, my poor fish, he's just all covered in oil. Poor thing. And what about my shells? Ooh, they're pretty yucky too. I wonder if we can get them cleaned with the little soap. So I have your little tiny container contains dish soap. Wash that off and then rinse it. But can you imagine a whole beach's worth? Oh, and my shell still feels pretty oily. I don't know. That might be hard to do. We also talked about what it does to a bird's feathers. Dip one of the feathers into some of your oil. I'm gonna use what's still in my boat here. And what do you notice about what happens to the feather? All those little tiny, I don't know if you call them hairs in the bird's feather, get all stuck together. And it's not only important for their flight that their feathers, here you can kind of compare one feather to another. It's not only important for their flight that their feathers have all those little pieces separate, but also for keeping them warm. The feather traps air between the little pieces, and that's how birds, especially seabirds, stay warm and dry. It helps keep the water out. So when they're covered in oil like this, their feather can't work correctly, and so they can't fly and they get cold. So even if the oil weren't making them sick, it also just makes it hard for them to be okay. So we can take a little soap and try to clean the feather without breaking it, because we don't want to break all those little pieces. Whoop. Oh, well, I wasn't meaning to demonstrate that right now, but did you see when the oil dropped, the soap dropped in, it pushed all the oil out? So when they were talking about chemicals that help gather the oil into one spot, they can use things like soap to do that. So then we want to gently rinse our feather. Of course, now we'd have to dry it, right? Let's see, let's get a paper towel. Also, my hands are pretty dirty. I wouldn't want to get him dirty again. And dry him off gently. And I don't know, we'll have to see. It doesn't look a whole lot better to me yet, but we'll let that dry. And then you can come back and look at your feathers and see what you think about washing shorebirds and if that helps them. The other thing that I was thinking we could use is this pretend fur to see what it's like for a furry animal to get oil on them. So get some oil on there. And I'm gonna guess that it has a similar effect. Fur also traps air to help keep animals warm, especially animals that swim in the ocean like seals. And that's pretty gross. Let's try some soap and see if we can get it cleaned up. I'm sure they don't like that process. Rinse that off. That seemed to work pretty well. I'm gonna guess for the furry animals, it's more about breathing the chemicals than about what happens to their fur. But that'll give us some things that we can think about, ways that we might be able to help with that. And maybe one of you will invent a new way to help with oil spills. Who knows? Next, we'll go on to our art project. So I've tidied up, cleaned up our work surface here. And now we've got 2 different coloring sheets that we can choose from, and you can do both, obviously, at home. One is a tide pool, and the other one is some sea creatures, and we're going to do a somewhat different technique with colored pencils. So hopefully you have your colored pencils from home. And when you're coloring with colored pencils, you can make something have different colors by coloring 2 colored pencils in the same place. Actually, I'm gonna switch to a lighter blue. So for my dolphin, I could color over my whole dolphin with light blue. And just color the whole dolphin in. All right, so I've got them all light blue. And then I want to make his back a little bit purpley. So I'm going to blend in a pink pencil. It makes it look like the back of him is a little bit darker, a little bit more purple than the other part. Now, you get that effect just from using the 2 colors together. But you can still see your pencil strokes, and they don't really quite blend together. So I saw this neat technique where you take your Q-tip and you dip it in your mineral oil just a little bit, just a tiny bit on the very tip, and then you use that to blend the 2 pencil colors together. And you can go over the whole, you might need a little more oil. You can go over the whole dolphin, and it kind of blends more like a watercolor paint than a colored pencil. You don't get the weight in between your pencil strokes the way you do. And it just gives you a somewhat different looking finished piece. Now, it will bleed through a little bit of oil on the back of the paper, so you're going to want to let this dry somewhere where it's okay if it gets a little oil on it. This is food grade mineral oil, so it's non-toxic, but oil isn't always all that good for surfaces, so you'll want to make sure that you put it on something where it can dry. And the other thing I discovered is then you can use your pencil colored Q-tip to do a little coloring somewhere else. So we can give our baby dolphin a somewhat lighter effect using that. The other way that you can do this technique is take a clean Q-tip and pre-wet the area that you want to color with a little oil. And then when you go and color your octopus in, you'll find that the colored pencil spreads out more evenly and darker than when you color somewhere that there is not oil. And that's another way to use the technique. You can also dip your colored pencils and you get an even richer effect. Look at how dark that one came out. Have a great day.